Hi everyone, in this module we will overview the use of alternative modes and non-traditional implement exercises, which have become increasingly popular in the field of strength and conditioning. Now, whenever implementing these types of training methods into training programs, one should consider some basic and specific guidelines to ensure that these methods are used safely. With the use of alternative modes and non-traditional implement exercises, the general guidelines are not very different from those used with traditional resistance training methods. That is, to ensure proper body alignment via selection of a stable body position. And when performing something like a freestanding ground-based exercise, an example would be using resistance bands for a back squat or performing something like a kettlebell swing. Then performing these exercises, you would typically use a position in which the feet are placed slightly wider than shoulder width and kept flat on the ground. So body weight and core stability training methods are low cost and among the most basic methods for performing resistance training. So you see some pictures here, examples of body weight, also known as core stability training methods. So these two here, the front plank as well as the side plank, are known as isolation exercises, again isolating a specific muscle group. Whereas the exercises down here below using a stability ball would be considered more core stability training methods. And here in the links here, you can find some examples of these different exercises in action, short videos. So when we're thinking about using body weight or core stability training methods, incorporating those into an individual's training program, we have to really differentiate what does core mean. So when we're talking about core, we're focused on the anatomical core. And the anatomical core is defined as the axial skeleton, so that is the skull, the vertebral column, the ribs, and the sternum, and all the soft tissues with proximal attachments that originate on the axial skeleton. So if we think about the anatomical core musculature, it's much more than just the abs and obliques. So yes, the abs here as well as the obliques are considered part of the anatomical core. We also have to consider any muscles that originate from the pelvis, such as the adductors. If we look at the back here, that would include also the gluteal complex, as well as the erector muscles of the lower back. We also consider the latissimus dorsi, or the lats, as well as the trapezius muscles as anatomical core muscles. So again, much more than just the abs here we're talking about. So some benefits of performing body weight and core stability training. One benefit is that these type of training methods often include closed kinetic chain based exercises. So in class we'll look at several examples of this and talk about the benefits of performing closed kinetic chain based exercises. Another benefit is that these methods strengthen several muscle groups at once. And as I already mentioned, they both represent a low-cost training alternative to the traditional resistance training that typically utilizes free weights or machines. We also have to acknowledge the limitations of body weight or core stability training methods. So obviously with body weight, the load is going to be limited to the individual's body weight. So there are several ways that we can increase the intensity of body weight training. We could have the athlete place perhaps a weight or plate on their back when they're doing something such as a plank, maybe wear a weighted vest, or you see a picture up here using a modified push-up position where the feet are elevated here on this platform or box, therefore increasing the intensity of the body weight push-up exercise. We also know that isolated core training, so again performing isolation exercises including the plank, whether it be the front plank or side plank, are not very effective at improving sports performance. However, what is well established is that including or incorporating ground-based free weight exercises, that includes squats, deadlifts, as well as a variety of Olympic lifts, those have been shown in the literature to result in greater activation of the anatomical core musculature and offer greater benefit to sports performance compared to isolation core exercises. Limitations of performing core stability training exercises. Typically, these exercises are performed on an unstable surface or using an unstable device, such as the instability ball. Yes, that does increase activation of the anatomical core musculature, but it also results in lower force and power output by approximately 70% compared to exercises performed under stable conditions. So again, going back to those traditional free weight resistance training exercises. And again, strong scientific evidence that ground-based free weight exercises involve a degree of instability that offers a much better training stimulus for the development of the anatomical core musculature as well as the enhancement of athletic performance when compared to exercises considered instability device-based exercises. So again, when we're talking about designing a training program, we cannot forget about the importance of the ground-based free weight exercises in terms of activating the musculature, allowing for physiological adaptations to occur that hopefully will improve one's athletic performance. We can also talk about variable resistance training methods that attempt to alter the resistance so the muscle maximizes force through the full range of motion of the joint. Variable resistance training methods commonly involve the use of chains or resistance bands. So you can see here in this picture, the athlete has the chains that are wrapped around the ends of the barbell in the bench press exercise. So if I were to ask you during which position is resistance the greatest, you can see here during the up phase, when the arms are locked out here, there's a greater resistance on the bar because now the chains are hanging off the ground as compared to the down phase here where the chains are basically bunched up on the ground here, providing little resistance on the bar. When using something like chains as a variable resistance training method, we can easily determine chain load by determining the top and bottom portion of the movement, summing that up, and then averaging to determine chain load. So for example, if we have an individual who has a 5 RM bench press of 200 pounds, then the chain load at the bottom of that movement, as you see over here on the right side, would be 0. Because again, the chain is not adding additional resistance to the bar in that down movement or at the bottom. And at the top, the chain exerts a resistance of 20 pounds. So we have the top or the bottom of 0 pounds, the top of 20 pounds. Therefore, the average here is going to be 10 pounds. So next, we can simply subtract the average chain load from the 5 RM load. Therefore, in this case, we would add 190 pounds to the barbell to achieve the appropriate loading. Now, there's been some research on the efficacy of chain supplemented exercises, but for the most part, beliefs that chain supplemented exercises provide a training advantage are largely unsubstantiated in the literature. So another low-cost alternative resistance training method is the use of resistance bands. So many of us are familiar with resistance bands and some of the exercises that we can use these bands for. But you can see it can be in a variety of exercises targeting the major muscle groups in this slide here. And in terms of the types of resistance bands that you commonly see, all depends on the manufacturer, but typically we see that the greatest resistance is provided by like a thick black band, whereas a lighter resistance is going to be indicated by different colors here or the thickness of the band itself. And then some bands that are a little more costly actually contain handles here. But again, the resistance is going to be proportional to either the thickness or the color of that specific band. So this is just an example here of using resistance bands to provide additional resistance in the performance of the back squat exercise. So you can click on the link here to see a video of the back squat with bands exercise in action. But in this case, the resistance band is wrapped around the rig or the apparatus itself. And then the other end is wrapped around the bar, importantly here on the inside of the collar, so that it does not slip off during exercise. So in this up portion of the back squat, we would have the greatest resistance because of the stretching of the bands. And obviously here at the down or the bottom portion of the back squat, little to no resistance. Another option here would be to use something like a heavy dumbbell, wrapping the resistance band around the heavy dumbbell. And in this case, the other end of the band is on the inside of the plates, again for safety reasons. And in this down phase here, or the bottom portion of the back squat, little to no resistance from the band. However, the resistance gradually increases as the individual stands up from the squat and achieves that top portion. So again, very simple way to provide additional resistance for an exercise such as a back squat or any other barbell exercise. Another very popular alternative training mode is using kettlebells to train. So there's a few videos here of kettlebell exercises, including the traditional or the very common kettlebell swing, and really popping the hips here, swinging the kettlebell up to eye level, and then repeating that for a set number of reps. More advanced would be something like a kettlebell single leg deadlift or stiff leg deadlift, or even more advanced would be something like a kettlebell snatch that's shown in the videos as well. So little has been studied in terms of the efficacy of kettlebell training on strength and performance. However, there have been a few studies showing that utilizing kettlebell training has a positive impact on cardiovascular fitness, particularly kind of light load, high volume kettlebell training, although this is not as much as traditional aerobic training has on cardiovascular fitness. So this one study published back in 2015 showed a 6% increase in VO2 max following 4 weeks of kettlebell training in soccer players. So with traditional aerobic training, depending on the person's initial fitness level, we typically see anywhere from about a 10 to 30% increase in VO2 max with traditional aerobic training. Other studies, including this one published in 2012 that we'll discuss further in class, have shown that kettlebell training can increase strength and power, but these gains in strength and power are typically much lower than those seen with traditional resistance training or using free weights.